Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this evening's webinar, which is titled How Might I Design and Deliver Sessional Football?
We take walking football and just play. We talk about the individual's choice of lifestyle, their commitment to their work environments, parents that might not necessarily be able to commit to that continued enjoyment of playing regularly in a team or competitive football. And as you can see on this slide here, I think it's really important that we look at how the Wildcats sessions are set up. So Wildcat session, for example, I remember going back maybe 7 years ago when I first set up my Wildcat session. I had almost had like a coach's hat on. I know that's going to sound really funny, but I had like a coach's hat on where I thought that I had to ensure that it was a real structured session plan. And I didn't necessarily think about the players in front of me or the participants and what that looked like for them. So for me, what I thought about when I was driving home, I was like, I've got to make sure that there's lots of fun, lots of smiles, there's plenty of participation where it's a safe environment for the participants to feel like they are safe to have risks or take risks. So it's really important to ensure that when we talk about recreational football, it's a real, I wouldn't say tailored, I'd probably say it's a more of like an opportunity for players to just try an environment where they just want to play with their friends.
Sessional football is more than just a game. It's a chance for anyone, anywhere to fall in love with football. Whether you're aged 4 or 94, a seasoned player or learning to play for the first time, it's about finding the freedom to play in a way that suits you.
The importance of the physical side as well as the psychological, and we talk about the four corner model. We talk about Wildcat sessions, that social element of our players coming in just to have that fun. It's non-competitive. They might just be playing because it's with their friends, and they may not necessarily want to be in a team, and they just want to take all of that pressure off them and actually just really have a bit of fun with their friends or just meeting new people.
Probably this importance piece adds around, I think it was from Kelsey, and she said that as a result of starting their Wildcat sessions in 2018, they've now got a full female pathway from under 6 to under 18, which is amazing. And I think, as much as being tailored to meet the needs of all our audiences, it also helps football and opportunities to grow, so that there's more opportunities for more people to play. So really nice to read some of these stories in the chat.
I'm Avril's mum. She's 7 years old and she's got autism. After 7 years, she made a friend. She's actually cuddling other children now. Comets has been different because basically Dave is just so laid back. He really does care. He gets to know the kids as they are. Everything's worked around them. It's like one big family here.
This is something that we've taken from the Wildcats training program. If any of you are involved, you might recognise this, but just links to many of the things that Abdullah's talked about in that section and how we create that environment to meet the needs and the varying needs of all the different participants. I'm not going to sit and read through it, but I think it's something that's quite helpful to remember because we call the model Smiles. And it might just get you thinking, if not already, about how we can really create that environment to meet all the different audiences that we're going to talk through in the next two parts of the webinar.
What does that enjoyment look like? What does the learning look like? And how do we make it inclusive of all our participants that are joining us in our sessions? But it's really important that Smiles is as the abbreviation there, but also smiles on their faces.
Credit has to go to not just Dave, but all the Daves out there who are spearheading the Comets program to try and create an all singing, all dancing, but as you said earlier, Abs, a safe, fun environment for, in the case of Avril, a youngster or an adult with a disability who might want to come along and experience football, whether it's for the first time or whether it's for a second or a third time, depending on where they're at in their football journey.
We'll have our own reason for being there. We might have had our own reason for starting to play football and wanting to continue to play football, but all our reasons and our motivations and our drivers are different. So I could sit here and tell you what my motivation for playing or coaching is, but then Abs and Matt would tell you perhaps something completely different in terms of what their motivations are. So I think the starting point within all our coaching, whether it's sessional football or team football, is why are they there and what are the reasons. So I think as we start to understand the players that are in front of us, and understanding what they want from their sessions and what they want from us as coaches, the other bit to probably think about is what experiences are they bringing with them, because that will be a massive driver and an influencing factor on the motivation and the skills that they show up with. And I think it's really important to think about that kind of opportunity versus experience. And the best example I could probably think of, and somebody has actually messaged me on here separately about like an adult female session that they've set up, and really trying to appeal to all those different abilities. Now, if you were to perhaps, if we look at Just Play, which is our adult recreational program, if you were to have perhaps a male Just Play session and a female session, what those individuals are turning up with might look similar for some, because both men and women in those sessions might have had previous opportunity to play the game. They might have had previous experience of playing competitively. But I would think that because of the generation that has gone before us, where women weren't allowed to play in school, weren't allowed to play football, or weren't encouraged to play football in school, it was very much seen as a boys' sport as part of the curriculum. I know when I was at school, we never in PE as girls got to do football. That was an after school thing if you wanted to do it, but it wasn't built into our curriculum, whereas for the boys it was. So again, what those females at that Just Play Centre are showing up with in terms of their skills, in terms of their motivation, like if you've been stopped from doing something, you might have a bit of even like bitterness towards it, but also like your skill set is not going to be as well established as somebody who has had those opportunities from being young. So I think it's a really important consideration for us as deliverers of programs and as coaches to think, why are they there? What are they wanting from the sessions? But also, what are they showing up with?
I then always think about those who, how do they know what they don't know? They've not been introduced to football. They don't go home to it. So they wouldn't know necessarily if it's for them.
And that's why I feel really inspired with like my role as coach development lead for women and girls. Like, I think it's so amazing. Yes, that there are programs that are trying to encourage more women into coaching, but just seeing the growth of the women's game, and because of all the different offers of football that we now provide in this country, sessional, competitive, etc., it's just amazing to see that there is an option for anyone who wants to play the game. And we used to talk about the different ages that people might show up to our session with. So the natural one we look at is, right, so someone shared in there about their dad in his late 60s. So we know that is his chronological age. But what I think is important to delve into and try and understand as well is what are their other ages that they're potentially bringing to football. And I've just put a few examples on here. So your football age is essentially how long you've been playing football for. So I've not got all the detail, but this dad who's in his late 60s, he's just started playing. Like, he might have never played before. So he's 60 years old, but his football age is 0. Or he might have played for a few years when he was younger and then stopped. So he might, in terms of football age, might be 11, but is still chronologically 60 years old. And I think once we can start understanding this, we can start to understand, like I said, why they're showing up in the way that they are, what behaviours we might be seeing, what connection that they've got to the game, but also like what their skill set is. And once we can understand that, we can then start to shape our sessions around what those individuals need. How can we understand them better? But then I think from a coaching perspective, I'd be looking at that and going, right, physically and socially, how can I best help that individual? How can I give them some stuff that's going to let them thrive and show off their technical and tactical capabilities? Actually, they might be really shy or lacking confidence and not really speak up in the session. How can I give them the opportunity to do more of that in my sessions? Because that's the stuff that they might be, we've got a real good opportunity here to help them with. So we're not just helping them develop as a footballer and with their football experiences, we're helping them as people.
I've actually used something similar to when, again, I refer back to apologies, when I set up the Wildcats, and it was more of a case of just understanding who's in front of me, and just understanding, where they feel they are, so I can make and tailor, whether I'm coaching or facilitating, I can tailor what I'm delivering. We spoke about the step principle that Matt will delve into in the practice spectrum. So, if you've not used it before, it's a really, really good tool to use to know what you're going to deliver, or perhaps what's in front of you to know what to coach as well.
So I always see connection gluing my content, because that's going to help me bring it to life. If the players or people in front of me buy into me and what I'm about, and then if they do, and they're going to come back for session 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, it's going to enable me to hopefully coach and guide them or teach them, depending on your role. So these reflective questions are designed to get you thinking about who's in front of you, but also what do you know about yourself? And do you take the time to really invest in your self-awareness before you deliver anything? Especially if it's a sessional session, which is a bit of a tongue twister. But I've written down in my notes here, you could have someone who's coming to your sessional project for the first time. So go back to the football age that you referred to earlier, Bex. They've got a football age of 0, whether they are young or old in life. You could also have someone who's actually got a football age of, say, maybe 10 years, but they've had a negative experience, but they left the game for whatever reason.
Yeah, if I just quickly add something in as well, and I think you're talking about self-reflection. I remember a few years ago when I was coaching a senior women's team, and I just stopped the session. I said, I don't understand why you're not getting it. And it was only until I had a break over Christmas, I realized it was me, and I was suffering from like coaching burnout, and it wasn't the players. So that, what version of you did they see, and I didn't have anyone around me to sort of necessarily say, actually, it's you. And I'm that's my blind spot that you just alluded to. And I've always now, ever since, been conscious of it. I often record my sessions to sort of see how I am in terms of how I present myself. And I think that's really important as coaches to have that self-reflection piece as well.
That's a good, honest share, Abs. And that in itself is a good example of self-awareness, is being honest with yourself. Because we know that coaching/teaching, especially if you are operating solo, can be a lonely place. And if it's been a good session, that drive home is often quite free-flowing. Every traffic light's on green and you're home in 5 minutes. If it's not been a good session, every traffic light's on red and you're reliving every conversation or practice that you delivered, going through there's what actually what you planned for and what actually happens. And clearly, if things didn't go well, then we tend to look at ourselves first, but rightly so, because we're steering that ship. I'll dive into the practice spectrum. For those who are unfamiliar with it, so this is a spectrum where you can put any practice that you deliver and it will sit somewhere on there from left to right. So there's a few examples on there. So if you've got the classic ball against the wall, it's going to sit far left because that's an unopposed practice with you and the ball. If you're taking part in a matched up game, so be it 5, 7, 9, 11 aside, that's going to sit very much on the right. And then you've got the bit in between, the bit we might call the grey area, where you're sort of scaffolding from going from further away from game realism, where you might be getting high technical returns and repetition on the left, ball against the wall stuff, to the building blocks of, right, we're going through some interference now, so I might be playing through a crowd or trying to dribble through some bodies, but they're not trying to get the ball off me, into a situation where we might be playing an overload, so a 2v1 or a 3v2. So it's almost like you're building up to a game, or you're taking a few steps away from a game in order to provide some building blocks to scaffold the learning. What contact time do the players have with the ball? Again, if they come into a football session, and I appreciate you might have other aims and objectives around the social corner, physical corner, or psychological corner, but what contact time are you allowing the players to have with the ball? And also, what activity time is there? And this links to your coaching input. What's your longest period of silence? Because that's a great question to ask yourself. If you are a coach who likes the sound of their own voice or who dominates, is that helping or is that hindering the flow of the session and the players enjoying and potentially demonstrating what they understand and any learning that could take place?
Where we're looking at crossing the central zone. Again, something that can be used for younger players, but you can adapt and change it based on who's in front of you. I like to call this game Cross the River, and it was actually one of my favourite practices when I used to work with this age group. So you've got the middle zone there, which you can use as, I think we used to call it shark-infested custard when we were working with the little ones. And they had to try and get across from one side to the other without being tagged by a shark. And again, using that step principle, progressing the practice. But by starting without a football, thinking back to that physical age of young players, in Wildcats, we speak about the different types of movers that we've got. And you could have girls come into Wildcats and you could have individuals come into any of your sessions that might not have done loads of other sports. So from a physical perspective, then perhaps not as developed as some of the other players their age. So again, how can we use these types of games to work on those fundamental movements, changing direction, that agility, that balance, that coordination, introducing different things, but then also introducing the football when they're ready. But again, if you're doing this with a different age group and a different set of players who've got different experiences, you might start with the ball. So it's just all about, again, understanding those players that you're working with and how do we adapt these sessions accordingly.
If I was to start by saying what's the most common question players will ask at the start of a football session, ... Most of us are now thinking it's, when can we have a game? Typically that's at the end of the session, but we're big advocates at the FA of almost structuring a session to play whole, part whole, or game, part game. So the project that we delivered a few years ago was very much game-based, and I know Just Play is very much around games. But you can weave in conditions into games to get them thinking about different areas of technical, tactical elements. So here we have one called Empty the Net, Yellows versus Blues. Both teams start with 2 balls in each goal, and there's 1 ball in the middle. Only 1 ball is in play at any one time. And the idea is to do exactly what it says on the tin, almost like it's sponsored by Ron Seal. You have to empty the net. So Yellows have possession here. They're looking to invade the blue team's half, play forward into the opposition's half, and in the hope that they're going to get an opportunity to create and score in and around the Blues' goal area. If they manage to score a goal, which the Yellows are shortly about to do now, they then take the next ball from their goal. And the reason I like this game is because it's quick in transition. The team who have just scored, yeah, they get to celebrate, but if they celebrate for too long and they don't get ready to play out from the back, then the Blues might be able to get set ready to pinch the ball back high up the pitch. So it's a really good game for high intensity, certainly kicks the physical corner. And it's one that can be quite free flowing again if you get the players right in terms of managing the difference. If we go back to the practice spectrum, you don't necessarily have to play even teams. You could play 6v4 if you've got 4 more experienced players against 6 less experienced players, for example.
And I did promise at the start that we would go back to this page. You've heard lots of different things about and reference to different programs. You've probably seen in the chat that people have been sharing their experiences of delivering these programs and the impact that it's having. So if you do want more information, I think there's some links being shared to these different pages where you can go and find out a bit more about some of the programs that we've mentioned this evening and how again, if you've got young players, or you've got people that are wanting to get involved in these programs, how you might signpost them to them. But also, if you are a club or a provider that is looking to increase your provision and perhaps deliver some of these programs, then there's information on our England Football website for you to dive into as well. So please have a look through those. You've heard about the benefits and the impact, and hopefully it's inspired you to get involved with some of these programs as well.